Last summer I built the majority of the anchoring system, including the bowsprit, which has the slot where the anchor will live when it's hoisted. Then there's a trough where the chain will run down under the deck. And then lastly, it comes to the windlass locker, where the windlass will live. The only part of this that I didn't build was the chain locker. And so once the chain runs through the trough and around the windlass, it falls down into some container that holds all that chain. And so that's the project we're going to get into this week. So let's go down into the forepeak area down here and see where we're going to build this thing. I'm up here in the forepeak. That's actually the forepeak forecastle area. So that's the bow of the boat. This is a watertight bulkhead, and then this area is what we're considering like a wet storage area. Last summer we built the windlass box, which is this right here. We built a new hatch. And so this is another watertight compartment from the rest of the boat. And the goal this week is to build a chain locker. So the windlass is inside this box, which is just under the deck, and it pulls the chain up, which holds the anchor, and then the chain falls down into a box. As is my first usual step in building any new part on Duracell, I start by drawing it out on the boat. Here I am drawing out the boundaries of the new box. The laser level comes in very handy for drawing straight lines on curved surfaces.
What are you thinking about here?
Well, I was questioning some of my own design and realizing this was a really good opportunity to call my friend Al, who I really respect and how he thinks about boats and his boat design ideas. Yeah, I was just realizing I had some questions.
First scoop on there.
Yeah, now this always seems to take up more space than you think. The windlass motor and gearbox.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They make, between the windlass and the motor, it's made for like decks up to this thick.
Right.
And a lot of them you can't shorten that.
Right.
So that this motor keeps getting lower and lower.
So you either build a fairing block on the underside, or you stack make the windlass higher. Okay. We're talking about the chain locker, which is going to be, this is the windlass box right here. There's going to be a hole right about in the middle where the chain will fall through and fall into a big box that's inside this. We're in the forepeak up here. It's kind of where the toys and stuff will get stored. And I'm trying to figure out like how big my chain locker should be, where the water should go, which is really important. And Al, his idea is that we could make the bottom of the chain locker high enough that the water just falls out the side of the boat instead of having to pump it out, which would be a lot of extra moving parts and complication.
Yeah.
Recently, the inspector has been getting calls from unknown numbers. Being a curious cat, she answers them, only to find out that a robot is telling her that Duracell has been stolen by a Norwegian prince and she must immediately transfer ransom money. As many of you are likely aware, personal data breaches are on the rise. There are hundreds of commercial databases and people's search sites that hold your personal information. Data companies have the inspector's full name, her social security number, home address, phone and email, date of birth, and more. That's where Incogni comes to the rescue. Incogni reaches out to data brokers on your behalf, requests your personal data removal, and deals with any objections from their side. Since many data brokers continue collecting your personal information even after they've removed it, Incogni also takes care that your data stays off the market by conducting repeated removal requests. This means that whenever a new record pops up on a data broker site, Incogni will automatically take care of it. All you do is create an account and choose whose personal data you want Incogni to remove. And Incogni will keep you updated on their progress every step of the way. So take back your personal data with Incogni. Use code Duracell at the link incogni.com/Duracell and get 60% off an annual plan. The link is also in the description below and as a pinned comment.
Okay, now this is a copy of one of the original construction drawings for Duracell. When we first learned about the boat, I happened to be going to Newport, Rhode Island for some work, and so I got in touch with Roger. Actually, my friend Chris put me in touch with Roger, and so I got to go to his house and go through the files for Duracell with him, and he made copies for me. So this is a copy of the construction drawing. The reason I pulled this out is Al was just here. We were talking about where the sole of the forepeak is in relation to the waterline. And so here I'm checking just to see that the waterline is in fact supposed to be below that forepeak sole. Who knows if they actually built it that way? I'll have to do some measurements and check exactly. Yeah, this is a good place to start. He just took a chunk of my drawing. And now he's going to eat it. Okay, so the challenges with this box are that I need to make it big enough so that the volume of chain that I plan on using, which is about 400 feet of 3/8 inch chain, will be enough, the box will be big enough to hold all that chain. And then the other consideration is drainage. And so we see two options. One is there will be basically some limber holes at the bottom of the box, and the water will just flow down to the lowest part of the bilge in this compartment only, because this is a watertight space, and the bilge pump would pump the water overboard. Or the bottom of the box could be above the water line, and then there could be just a drain hole that drains the water straight out the side of the boat. And the box would be slightly more complicated to build, but the overall system would be much simpler. So that's what we're going to try first. The hard part is finding where exactly the water line is. In the meantime, I've drawn out where the box should be based on the windlass box that's above it. And so you can see my lines. So the top of the box will be 1 foot below the bottom of the windlass box. And that's to give me room to work on the motor, and then to get my hands in there to mess with the chain if I need to. So it should be a relatively simple box to build. There'll be some weird angles and stuff up there, but otherwise, should be a fun project.
Now that I had my design puzzles figured out, it was time to get started building.
So the next step is just to basically sand this area where I'm going to be building the box, get most of the paint off of it.
Wait, more sanding?
Aren't you excited? There's always more sanding to do.
I thought we were at the end of the cutting holes in the boat era.
You thought wrong. I'll never be done.
Great. And as always, after you cut the hole, you look inside for a very long time. You really took a good long look in this shot. What did you see, honey? What's so interesting? Do you think Mike Plant hid some treasure in there when he built it?
Well, I was looking for rats first and foremost.
You found, how many petrified rats have you found in this boat?
Maybe like 5, but
I thought it
I
was
think
more.
they're long gone now. No, I was just checking it out. You know, I was opening up a space I hadn't seen before, so looked dry and dirty and
Dry.
pretty boaty.
Pretty boaty. Dry, that's a good sign.
It was a good sign, yeah.
So yesterday I drew the box and I actually cut out from this sole that's inside this, what's going to be the anchor locker or chain locker. The reason we cut the sole out is because in the future, if we decide that we don't like water going out the side of the boat, we'd rather water go down into the bilge where we pump it out, we can easily change it without making a huge modification. We could just cut the floor out. So the sides that I'm going to build for this chain locker box are going to go all the way down to the hole and basically make a box that's sealed against the hole. So the plan right now is to start templating and building the sides. You'll notice that instead of going all the way to this forward bulkhead, I'm just going to here. It makes building the box a lot easier and I'm not losing a bunch of volume by not going all the way to the wall.
You all know the drill. I used my template to trace out the shape on my foam board, and I'm using a 1/2-inch Edura panel for this box. This will be a great application for the Edura panels to keep the box light while structurally sound enough to contain 600 pounds of anchor chain. After templating and cutting out the inboard wall of the locker, I had a pretty good fit.
On there. So we have to build the floor of the sole of the chain locker to be above the water line. And so I didn't know exactly where the bottom of this is compared to the water line. So I drilled a hole right here, right at the corner, just to see where we're at. And we'll go check it out down below where it ended up under the boat. All right, we're down here at the bow, underneath the boat. You can see where the painted water line is. This is about where the drawn water line, the designed water line, should be. And obviously we don't know where the actual water line is, where the boat sits in the water, because we haven't put the boat in the water yet. And it'll be a little bit heavier than when, you know, the boat was in racing trim. And so it'll actually be a little bit higher. The water line will be higher than what it was designed to be at initially. The sole of the chain locker is right here. So we're a good 2 or 3 inches above the drawn water line. A couple things to think about here is that, you know, we don't want too much water getting into the chain locker while we're sailing. One thing we can do is put a cowl over the hole so that as we're moving forward, water isn't getting pressed into the chain locker. And I can raise it up to like somewhere right at the the painted water line, mostly so that rust and mud and stuff doesn't stain the boat, stain the paint, like the topside paint. So that means that we have to move the sole of the chain locker up just a couple inches, which is fine. We have tons of volume in that thing.
I used the hole drilled from the outside in as the pilot hole for the larger hole that I'll drill from the inside out. And I only drilled through to the outside fiberglass skin, not all the way through. Then I glued up a fiberglass tube with Total Boats Thixo epoxy and pressed it through to that outside skin. The tube should make a nice seal against the outside skin so there's no water intrusion to the core. And of course I used an embarrassing amount of glue on this. I started to glue together the box using my Thixo Pro from Total Boat, which I used to both bond the edges of the box together as well as for the fillets underneath the fiberglass tapes.
Yesterday, I got a lot done and built half of the chain locker box. Today, I got to finish it, which means I'll be installing the bottom, which will meet right up with the drain that goes overboard, and then I'll finish with the last side. Tomorrow, I can glass it all together, and then we can paint it. I installed very strong landing cleats for the bottom of the box to sit on. I cut the bottom out of an old piece of cockpit which has an extra thick core and a few extra layers of fiberglass so the chain won't dent the bottom and it won't break under the weight of the chain. When the bottom was down, I went ahead and glued and glassed the bottom of the box together using Total Boat's high performance epoxy.
Then the last side was templated and glued to the box. The box needs to be watertight and very strong, so I glassed all the edges inside and out.
I drilled 3 new holes in the box. The first 2 are drain holes. This lid will live closed when we're sailing, but water will be able to fall into it if water's coming over the deck or it's raining or whatever. So that water needs to drain out. I drilled 2 holes in the corners where water can flow down into the chain locker and then out the hole that's in the side of the boat. The other hole I drilled is for the chain itself. We have a template that is the shape of the new windlass when it arrives. This is where the chain falls through, and so I put the windlass in the template in the approximate location it's going to be, and we drilled a hole there so we could see how the chain falls through the windlass box down into the chain locker. All right, and here's the drain hole that drains the chain locker. This is a few inches above the water line, and we're going to install a cowl that will be over top of it so that when water is rushing by, water's not getting shoved up into the chain locker. So I think it's a very simple solution, no moving parts. So these are the drain tubes where the water will drain out. There will be hoses connected to these that will direct the water down into the chain locker, which is this beast here. So let's drop the chain through the windlass hole, see how it stacks up. So the chain will run down the trough and then around the windlass and fall into the chain locker below. We're going to be using, like I said before, 3/8 inch, likely high test chain. And I'd like to do 400 feet, which is 600 pounds. And according to my box, it should be about 4 cubic feet worth of chain. I'm really very happy with how this is stacking up in here. On a daily basis, we wouldn't use more than like 200 feet of chain, and then the extra 200 feet would be in a more extreme circumstance. And so, the first couple hundred feet could be faked away on the side, and then the rest of it would be stacked up on top of each other and pulled out and dropped back in very regularly. One thing I've seen people do is use like a traffic cone that is right underneath where the chain drops through, and that prevents what's called castling. Castling is when the chain stacks on top of itself and creates this pyramid or cone of chain, and it stacks up so high that the chain can't fall through anymore. So I don't know if you've seen these situations, but I'd love to hear your experience with preventing castling on your own boat. Anchoring, in our experience and what we've heard from other folks, is that it's just as much of an art as it is a science. And I think the same could be said for designing an anchoring system, which has been, I think, very fun. So we'll see how it works once we actually get out on the water. But I don't know, I think it'll work pretty good.
Don't forget to check out the Incogni deal. The link is in the description. And thanks for watching, you guys.
As we get into these systems projects, there's a ton of work that happens in the background to plan for all this stuff that's going to be installed in the boat. One new partner that we have is Sea and Land Yacht Works, which is based out of Rhode Island, and Mike has been a huge help to get the electrical design going. They're helping us procure the correct like batteries and systems that we're going to be installing on the boat. They've been a huge help. That's what they do, is electrical designs. They do electronics. They specialize in lithium battery installs. And so if you're interested or need that kind of work done, check them out. We'll put their website in the description below the video. But thank you very much to Sea and Land Yacht Works for their help. We also have a couple Patreons to thank. First, thank you to Corrado, who's from Lake Como, Italy. He's got a new Ranger 29 that he's fixed up. He said he spent 4 years fixing it up, and he sails it out there on Lake Como. And also thank you to Josh. Josh is over in Michigan. He is retired now, and he did the first Scallywag camp and now spends a few hours a day working on his Scallywag in his shop. And we hope to see that thing in the water very soon. So thank you very much to both of them. And thank you so much to everybody that's helping make this project a reality. We couldn't do it without you.